Good evening, everybody. It's Dr. Sean here with your arthritis movement, talking about strength in this lesson. Building strength is important in maintaining our overall health. And as we age, if we aren't actively working towards building strength, then we are in fact losing it, and it is part of the aging process. However, we can attenuate, slow down, or stop that strength depletion by actively completing strengthening exercises for our muscles. We're going to talk a little bit about how increasing your strength actually increases your joint stability. It allows you to reduce the stress on the joints from daily activities by actually making a stronger body. And it also helps to prevent ongoing degenerative changes. It's also really moving towards making sure that as we improve our mobility and our flexibility, that we also improve our function. So it is kind of the next stage of evolution for our recovery, prevention, stopping the impact of arthritis on our physical self. So first off, your muscles are required to create movement. So we have our joints that move. For example, a hip joint, which is a ball and a socket, that actually is fairly stable to some degree, but we move to something that's more associated, like a hinge joint, like a knee. There's less stability there. So the things holding that joint together are less bony and more soft tissue, i.e. the ligaments around it and then the muscles there. But our movement is created by the muscles that are on either side of the joint. So generally speaking, within the normal planes of movement, we will have flexion, we'll have extension, and then we'll have deviation to the outside or the inside, as well as rotational movements. Those are kind of the 6 basic movements of most joints. So it's the muscles that drive the movement. So without muscle strength, we'll actually have reduced movement or reduced quality of movement. So strengthening our muscles within a pain-free range of motion actually does support the health of the joint. If we support the health of the joint, we actually prevent the progression of arthritis and can, to some degree, reverse the functional impact by creating a more flexible, stronger joint. So muscle strengthening is an important next step with respect to progressing in your arthritis management. So topic number 1, enhancing joint stability. So when we talk about the stability of the joint, that's the ability of the joint to lock itself into a position or stay within a healthy range of motion. So an unstable joint will have the potential to dislocate, to move beyond its normal range, possibly put excess strain on the holding elements, which are the ligaments or the muscles. So like I said, some joints have more inherent stability from the way the joint is shaped, like for example a ball and socket joint like the hip. The hip is a really strong socket around the ball, so there's not a lot of ability for that to move regardless of the muscle strength. But if the muscles aren't strong enough, those bones aren't providing the stability. If that's why we end up causing articular damage within that joint if the muscles aren't working properly. If the muscles are strong enough, then that joint moves smooth and fluidly within that socket. Okay. When we go to a shoulder joint, the socket is more open, and the actual muscles provide a lot of the stability because the shoulder has massive amounts of range of motion, but the muscles have to be strong in order to stabilize the joint. So creating that joint stability is really, really important, especially the more mobile the joint gets. When we go to a knee, which is a hinge style joint, which essentially has 2 main movements of flexion and extension, there's not much holding that joint together. The joints slide on each other. There are ligaments on either side and through the middle that connect that joint, that stop it from moving this way or stop it from moving that way. There's also your menisci and the cartilage there that creates joint surface. But if the muscles aren't strong, that joint is really going to hyperextend or hyperflex, or it's going to move medial and lateral and create a lot of strain on the joint and a lot of repeated slow damage that in the long term becomes osteoarthritis. Okay, so creating that strength in those joints, or in the muscles around those joints, is what creates the stability and stops and cushions our movements. Okay. Reducing joint stress, topic number 2 with respect to increasing your strength. think of the construct of if we jumped off of one step and land, we want to be able to cushion that and land softly. If we land softly, that's the muscles that allow that soft landing. It's the same thing as if we come down the stairs. If we go slam, 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 slam on a locked out knee joint that's just going clunk, 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 then we're not actually absorbing the shock. And that'll happen if our muscles aren't strong enough. And it can happen with every step we take. If that foot seems very heavy, that's a lot of impact on the ankle. If that knee can't bend to absorb the shock, but stop the bend and control the bend, and then straighten back out as part of the normal gait pattern, then we end up with more impact in the joint. So stronger muscles used appropriately to cushion, recover, and propel us forward will actually reduce the stress on the joint. So it's very, very important to sort of build that muscle strength component into your ongoing arthritis management. Fall mitigation, the biggest issue as we age is how we're able to recover from a fall. If our muscles are weak, if our muscles aren't strong enough, and we step in a hole, if we miss a step at the bottom of the stairs, if we roll our ankle into a little pothole as we're walking down the sidewalk, if the muscles aren't strong enough, we end up with joint damage. We possibly end up with a fall, possibly end up with a sprain or a strain or maybe even a fracture. And the health outcomes as we age with respect to something significant like a fracture, they really, really do shorten our lives. Think of the construct of losing muscle mass, losing cardiovascular strength, losing the functionality of our heart and lungs and our entire cardiovascular system. It is a rapid decline when we have to do something like bed rest. So when we break our hip as we age and we have to have surgery and we have to be in bed for several days, there is muscle loss, there's cardiovascular deconditioning. It is difficult to recover from, and more difficult as we get deeper and deeper into age. Building strength now is one step in the direction of not losing it. So if we aren't doing something every day to make ourselves a little bit stronger, then we are in fact losing muscle that day. So we need to make sure that we're moving. We need to make sure that we're not just moving now, we're talking about challenging the muscle, taking it to the point of fatigue. Generally speaking, lots of different things that you want to consider when you're doing some strengthening activities. One, find a pain-free range of motion. Find an exercise that does not create joint pain, because if we are exercising and creating joint pain, we're feeding into our arthritic changes. But if we can find an exercise that does not hurt, we can effectively start adding a little bit of light strengthening in there. We want generally to have as much range of motion as possible before we do a lot of strengthening, but we can start with light weights and high repetitions fairly early in that process. So you're looking to take the muscle to the point that you feel it. In the early stages, it's not about failure, it's about metabolically challenging the muscle so it can recover. So you want to take it to the point that there is a little bit of heat in the muscle, there's a little bit of burn perhaps, there's that feeling of activity. As we get stronger, we can start, and as we know that we've got good range of motion and good joint stability, and that we're recovering from some of the losses that we've experienced throughout our arthritis career, we can then start to load to the point of progressing towards failure. But the closer we get in an exercise, say for example, a pushing exercise, whether it be push-ups or a bench press, the closer we get to failure, the closer we get to losing our stability of the joint. So if we're challenging the muscles to move that joint and move it again and move it again, and the muscles start getting weaker and they start getting shakier, then we run the risk of an injury, a slip in the joint, some sort of sprain, strain, injury, or we run the risk of the muscle actually being damaged to the point of a tear. So we want to, at the beginning, get to the point that we can find an exercise that we can do sets of 12 to 15 of. And at the end of that 15, we should feel fatigue in the muscle, not pain, not shaking, not failure. Okay, when a muscle shakes, we kind of, sometimes in the old days, we kind of equated that muscle shaking, or what we call tetany or approaching tetany, as that's where we need to get to. That's when we know we've really challenged the muscle. What's happening at that stage is actually the muscle is fighting for survival. So you're squeezing the muscle, as we've talked about in previous videos, which is that fiber sliding. If it starts to shake, it's actually turning on and turning off. It's squeezing and relaxing, because it's actually defending itself from failure. So we don't want to live in that zone. We want to take our muscle strengthening activity at that sort of, again, in the early stages. 15 repetitions should feel like a good burn in the muscle, but the muscle should fully function. If it starts to shake, you're done. Take a rest, take a break, and then work on your next set, maybe at a slightly lighter load if you couldn't achieve the full 15. When we start to lose our movement control, then we start to actually put ourselves into a state that's closer to injury, and we don't need to be there. So very gentle, high repetitions, low weight, definitely at the beginning. As we get into more advanced, when we've been exercising and we've got a group of exercises, Kim and I will produce some videos that are going to show sort of some whole body routines, starting off with our upper and lower body strengthening exercises. Those are great. Those are designed to cover the entire muscle system in a balanced way. So starting off there, but trying to work through those repetitions. As we get to the point, say after several weeks of making those an alternating daily routine, and knowing that, okay, this exercise is not making my shoulder hurt or not affecting my arthritic knee, I'm still able to function, still able to recover, then we can start challenging with actually true strengthening, which is taking that weight up, but reducing our repetitions. So ideally, we're looking to pick 5 exercises at a weight load that we can complete about 5 repetitions safely, but close to failure. That concept of, I can do 5, I feel safe, I feel in control, but I bet you by the time I got to 6, 7, or 8, I would be problematic. So that's where we want to live. And then we're going to deal with that 5 exercises, sets of 5,